She's older, right? She should start.
That was so funny.
Hello and welcome to Sip and Tip. I'm MJ.
And I'm Sine.
Today, we have a doozy for you. Hopefully to avoid some aggravation. Today we are going to talk about
tips for first-time homebuyers.
Where was this when I needed it? All right, tip number 1. Inspectors. Get at least 2. You need a first opinion and a second opinion because sometimes the first opinion, not so helpful. Also, meet the inspector there. Don't let your realtor meet your inspector there. You never know who knows who. Is a small world in your community of real estate personnel, meaning the agent, the realtor, the seller's
agent.
Like there's a lot of people, but it's a small community that they all get together and have tea, I feel like. So you want to meet all of the people there so you could guide the conversation, so you know and you can see who has partnerships or friendships or relationships with whoever, because it's really for your best interest to know what's going on with the home before you buy it.
Definitely. And a lot of times your first inspector will miss something.
Right.
Like it could be a finished basement. And if they put on there that they couldn't inspect 100%, you definitely should get a second opinion.
Right. And don't tell the second opinion what the first opinion says.
Not at all.
Let them think that they are first.
Definitely.
And if for whatever reasons things are not accessible to be inspected, get a contractor if you can. Again, it will behoove you to do this because there are certain things that you cannot see at certain points. And inspectors, let's be real, they're not trained to go into corners this big or look behind, a fake wall that was just put up randomly that there's no door to, or stuff like that, to see if there's damage or something that you might need to know. So you might need to get a contractor with scopes or something like that to look into little holes. Like in my basement, I have this wall where they extend it and literally the windows maybe like a 10 by 10. Who's fitting through that? So yeah, we use the camera to like look around, but we don't know the depths of what's behind that wall. Anything could be back there, right? But it's not causing us any problem, so we just let it be.
Sorry.
She knows how I am.
Tiny little ant.
Ooh,
you done freaked out, I know.
Ooh. Ciao. Almost died just then.
Let's talk about bugs.
You should definitely inspect for bugs. You might have an ant nest or something. Just be careful.
So that is actually really true, especially
Yes.
if your house has been sitting for a while. So for instance, my house was vacant for 20 years before I got it. Before the rehab person I bought it from got it. And the trees that's in the yard is still plentiful now, but they cut it back a lot. Like I've seen pictures and it looked like it belonged in a forest. Like it looked like it was overpopulated. So bugs and stuff like that. When I first moved in, we had centipedes, like unbelievable. It was awful. And I didn't know why at first, but now they've calmed down now that we've been there for 2 years. Same thing with the ants. The ants come regularly. Things like that. And so I have an unfinished basement that is also the fieldstone foundation, which means it's literally that old school stone that's put together with mortar and concrete. So every so often that needs to be redone. That was not rehab for I don't know how long. So that then fell on me after purchasing the home. And it's a great project if you have a lot of time on your hands because you don't need a contractor to do it. But if you don't have a lot of time, like me, 2 years later it's still not done. And so it does cause problems with like water if you get a lot of rain. I'm fortunate enough to not have any leaks from it. But there are parts where you in the cold you can put your hand to it and feel the breeze. So I know there definitely needs to be a quick rehab to that wall. Just especially because most of it's underground. So if you don't rehab it, the ground at some point is going to start pushing in. So you want to make sure that's taken care of. And again, it's not something that's make or break because it's a solid foundation.
Right.
But it would have been nice if I could have had the previous owner take care of that before I moved in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, see, one thing we came across was the basement would gain water.
Yes.
Now, the funny thing is, it's gaining water because the gutters are too close to the home.
Yes.
So pay attention to your gutters. Make sure that it's far enough away from the house that it's actually running off the side, not into your foundation, because that will also ruin your home. Tons of water in your basement. If you don't have a sump pump, you're going to need a whole lot of stuff to soak up some water.
I had that issue too. And so what I did is I bought the attachment at the end of the gutter that ran it away from the house. The problem is you don't always know where or what direction you need to run it if you're not equipped with that information. So especially in my backyard dips, it's slanted towards my house. So when the snow starts to melt, because I'm in New England, it runs towards my house. So what I had to do is I already had to revamp my back door, my dog house, so that water doesn't get in. And then my gutters, I had to move them so that they ran away from the house.
Right.
Or at least into the grass.
That's what we did. And it's funny because at first we used some tarp and you put it under the gutter and you direct it where you want it to go. So sometimes tarp can help, but it's better if you can inspect and find these things before you move in.
Yes.
Less of a headache.
Or, my preference would be to add drains into my yard. So that way but that's a big project because then you gotta contract with the city and get it to the drain pipes, and it's a big project that I'm not willing to embark on at this time. So there are some less expensive tasks that you can do to really get the water away from your home. There are these bags that are relatively thin when you buy them. You put them where you need them and then they fill up with water, and then when the water is not present they will air dry and they don't create mold, none of that, but they do absorb the water. I have used that before I got my door fixed because the water was coming down the stairs. It wasn't coming like in the sides where we thought we would have problems. No, it was coming in the door, down the stairs, and into the basement. So we use those at the door to just, on the outside of the house at the door to stop it from going inside. And it worked wonders until we could get that fixed. But that's another thing. Again, inspectors could have seen that.
Right.
But they didn't. And we didn't know because we were first time home buyers. So.
And the funny thing is, when we saw the water in the basement, the lady actually lied. So she said, oh no, they were fixing the pipes and that's all that is, and it's just water getting it out. No.
Right.
So definitely do your research. Definitely get an inspector. They are very important to your first home.
Yes. And visit the home as many times as you can.
Yes.
And I strongly encourage, if you can, to talk to neighbors. Because neighbors will let you know what kind of people were living there.
True.
So you can see if they kept the home or if they just rehabbed it enough to sell.
Right. And on top of that, pay attention to the things that they leave behind.
Yes.
Because sometimes they leave the paint and stuff that they've used, whereas it might say stain concealing paint. And if it says stain concealing, it's possible you have a leak somewhere.
Right.
So you definitely have to be mindful.
And so one thing I experienced, which no one could foresee, is the contractors that worked on the house dropped some stuff into my plumbing.
Ooh.
That was fun.
What?
So they dropped a whole entire towel rack and a towel into the plumbing. So within the first 3 months of us moving in, our toilets were backing up. It was backing up into our tubs and our showers.
Oh, wow.
And so we had a total of 3 plumbers come out, and they went down with cameras. They did all this stuff. They snaked it. They did a lot of stuff. Now I have an extra port in my basement because they had to drill through the concrete in my basement, put in an extra port because they had to pull out that metal thing, is what they said. It's something metal in there. But after they pulled that out with the towel and the end brackets, now my plumbing's fine. But that's something an inspector would not see. That's something no one would see or know of until you get the repercussions.
Right.
So that's something I wouldn't have been able to ask for them to fix beforehand, but that is something that I had to deal with while unpacking and getting everybody situated in the home.
Well, see, that's why I mentioned the stain concealing paint, because we didn't realize that we had a roof leak because there was no evidence of it. But when we had a heavy rain, boom, there's the leak.
Yeah.
And we actually had it fixed twice, believe it or not. We had one roofer come out, claimed they fixed it, claimed they saw something else they claimed to fix. No. Month later, rain came, boom, there it goes again. To think you repaired it, to find out you didn't repair it, and then just say, screw it, just get a whole new roof. That was a job.
Yeah.
Especially since when you get the roof done, those contractors screwed up a little bit, leaving debris everywhere. You gotta be careful of the kids. You gotta worry about nails and pieces of metal, sharp pieces of metal, because they're not thinking. The contractors did not clean up their mess.
When they're supposed to.
So
Contractors should clean up their mess because that's their tools, that's their stuff.
exactly. I mean, I don't know why there's not repercussions for them not cleaning up their mess, but I wish there was. Should have deducted some money.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the same thing. When you show up late to a doctor's appointment, you penalized, but they ain't really late. Same difference. But what else do you? Well, the other thing I would say, like if you have a thermostat and a water feeder, stuff like that, you've got to check for wire loosening. You've got to take the thermostat off and check it, because if you don't and it's covered in so much dust or it's defective, your gas bill can be extremely high. You know, so you gotta check for things like that. I mean, they seem little, but the repercussions in the end are horrible.
And for our techie people, for the thermostats that you can occupy with your phone and change the temperatures, those only go with certain heating systems and certain water tanks. So before you purchase those things, and I know for me, we got a package that if we got certain services or things, then we got this bundle of items for free. So we ended up selling the thermostat because we weren't switching out all these other things that didn't need to be switched out. But just if you're thinking about buying one, if it's not free, then please just look into that, because that's something that's needed.
And that's good you said that, because I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so another thing that is important for the heating system, if you have a chimney, I think it's called a backdraft that you can get from the chimney if your heating system is not at a certain level over the piping that goes into the chimney. Mine's is at the very brink of the line of not getting a backdraft. And what that means is all the fumes go back into your home. You don't want that. And so they positioned it in a way so that it's safe, it's by standard, it's up to code, but it's not as best as it could be. So you really want to, again, have somebody that knows this information to come out and look, because again, the inspector said nothing. Of course, the people selling the house said nothing. It wasn't until I had the plumbing issue and all these other people in my basement where they're like, you might want to look into that. And then when they actually did the specs and all of that, they found that it was too cold, but just right on that line of not meeting the standard.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. Now you make me want to check ours.
Yeah, it has to be so many like inches above, and yeah, stuff like that.
I'm trying to think of anything else then.
Something I encountered at an apartment, not even at my home, but I knew to look for it at my home because I encountered it at an apartment. Stairways. If you can stand on the stairway and jump, and so you know how kids just like hop from stair to stair going down? Do that, because if it cranks or you feel yourself kind of pushing the stair in, you want to rethink that. Because that means that the staircase is going to need some type of assistance soon, because it's already given way, and you don't have all your family members in the home going up and down the stairs. It's just you. Especially if you have children, as they grow and they hop or bop, or you bring in heavy stuff down, or whatever the case may be, you don't want your stairs to give way.
True. Very good.
And stairs, for me, like the stairs, the corner stairs, like those turns where they have those longer pieces of wood, those are the ones that usually, well, the one time I did it had problems, because the wood is longer, so it needs to be supported more, but some people don't put the reinforcement in because it takes away from whatever's underneath.
Gotcha. In your bathroom, there's a drain lever. In ours, I noticed that underneath the full silver circle in the tub, there's actually a hole. That hole actually led water into my kitchen. So, be mindful of that as well. You gotta see if there's any leaks.
Or if you are missing caulking.
Right, caulking. That's the word. Man, because I didn't know that was happening. I'm in there taking a glorious hot bath, and then I'm hearing, Mom, there's water running in the kitchen. Like, oh God, here we go. Gotta get out the tub. So those are other things. You gotta look for leaks. Sometimes the leaks are in the walls. You can't see them because the pipe itself might be loose. But
yes, which from the plumbing issue, I did get a leak because again, you can't stop it from backing up at some point. But what ended up happening is we got mold in our basement on the structures, the beams, and no one runs to replace any of the actual structure of the house. Like, fixing the walls less expensive than fixing the actual sturdiness of the house. Like, that is the structure of the house. You don't want to do that. So there are ways to treat mold, but those are things you want to really get in there and fix beforehand. If you have windows in your basement, it would behoove you to open all the windows and let it air out, because basements, that's where you get the basement smell, that's where you get the moisture buildup. Open those windows,
or get one of those dehumidifiers for the basement, because that's what I do. I have a basement, I have a dehumidifier.
Yeah, you also have a finished basement too, which is a little different.
Yes,
too.
but because of the leak, I think that the mold, the wet, the dampness in the walls, I'm worried about it. So use the dehumidifier. Hopefully it,
And opening the windows will also keep down the cobwebs. You can't put up a cobweb when there's a breeze because it blows away. So just opening your windows in a home, period. Homes are almost like a living thing is what I learned, and they have to breathe. You have to refresh the air. So opening the windows and letting it breathe will be beneficial for sure. And we suggest that you look out for the following: doors that don't actually attach to the latch and close all the way.
Sink faucets that are wobbly.
Fixtures such as sinks or counters that are not secure to the wall.
Cracks and warped floors.
Yes.
If you have radiators, look for burn marks around the radiator feet. Make sure it's not going through the floors.
Windows that don't have insulation around the sides, if you can feel a breeze coming from the sides, the windows need attention.
Same thing for your doors.
Yes. From the outside, you should not be able to wedge a card between your front door and the door frame. So you want to stand on the outside and just push on the door to see how much it'll move without actually turning the knob.
If you have a little small hole at the bottom of the doors, that means you got mice coming back and forth. So you might want to look for that too.
Also, with the front and back doors, any egress doors, you want to make sure that there is the wind blocker or that little strip at the bottom, because if not, all of the cold during cold nights, cold days, or if you're in New England, winter days where snow or the wind will come in, and that's not fun for you. All of your heat is also leaving that way.
Pay attention to your porches. The floorboards on the porch can be warped or rising. Some screws could be missing, nails could be missing. Your ceiling in the porch could be rotted.
Also, doors. There is a such thing as an outside door and an inside door. You cannot, and I repeat, cannot use an indoor treated door for an outside door, an egress door, because it will not hold up to the elements. It is not insulated the same way. And you will have problems, whether it's with weather or the door swelling or anything else that kind of comes with it. It's not built for the same amount of usage and or treatment being an egress door.
So hopefully we have helped you in your improvements or identifying certain aspects of your first home. And hopefully you won't run into some of the problems we did.
Yes. And with that, peace, love, and happiness. Be aware, stay alert.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Yes. Toodles.